Former Prime Minister Tony Blair has exclusively told this programme that the police are losing the battle against knife crime. He's urged the Prime Minister to hold a meeting of her Emergency Council, COBRA, the group which meets to discuss urgent and high priority issues and act with a determination to do whatever it takes. Mr Blair defends stop and search, saying it's a vital tool to reduce violent crime. But figures show if you're black, you're more than 8 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people. And one former senior commander with the Met Police has told us that the stop and search is being used in a way that is counterproductive. He says it could damage community relations and even lead to further riots. Our reporter Noel Phillips has this exclusive film.
Two people were fatally stabbed in separate incidents across the capital over the weekend. In West London, where a 17-year-old boy was stabbed to death, the area was placed under Section 60 police powers, allowing officers to stop and search anyone without reasonable suspicion. This footage, filmed just weeks ago, shows a group of teenagers running through a North London shopping centre with knives. But will increasing stop and search really help to tackle knife crime?
The police have got to have the stop and search powers. Of course, you've got to do this in a culturally sensitive way, but remember, the communities that are most affected by these crimes are the communities that will be sensitive to these questions.
Stop and search, one of the most controversial tactics used by police, has long been the centre of controversy.
Absolutely very concerned that, there are officers who don't have the skill, the experience to do stop and search properly. They don't have the street craft to do stop and search properly, and that's my concern.
When they're predominantly targeting us black people, what is it doing? All it's doing is just making us aggravated, making us angry, and making us distrust the police in general, where they're targeting us.
Young black men, like Ahmed, are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police.
If it's not knife crime, it's for drugs. If it's not drugs, it's antisocial behaviour. It's always something. Like every other time, it's coming up with something. So that's what it is. It's just excuses, really.
Ahmed, who moved from Somalia as a toddler, has grown up in the Wood Green area of North London, where there have been at least 1 killing and many stabbings so far this year.
A few hours ago, straight away, jumped out the car, put me in handcuffs, telling me I'm getting restrained, I'm getting detained for a search. They searched me, they found nothing, but what they gave me is this and said it was because of drugs.
Just hours before we started filming with Ahmed, he was detained by police in a nearby street.
You don't need that. You really don't. Am I getting stopped? Why am I getting stopped?
After being searched, he was given this form with reasons as to why he was stopped. But he says despite turning his life around, after serving a short jail term for a violence offence, he continues to be harassed by the police.
I'm not going to say I've not done things in the past, but that's what it is. You learn from your mistakes.
The police say they have a job to keep people in the capital safe. Knife crime's on the increase. There are a lot of violent crime in this area. What have you got to worry about if you've got nothing to hide?
Like, you're putting us on the outside, on the roads, putting us on handcuffs, like we've committed an offence for a search. If I don't get stopped today, I guarantee tomorrow or the day after that. But in a week, 3 times in a week of minimum, we'll get stopped.
The police can stop and search people under many laws. Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, Section 1 of the Police Criminal and Evidence Act, and the Misuse of Drugs Act.
There are officers who don't have the skill, the experience to do stop and search properly. They don't have the street craft to do stop and search properly. And that's my concern, with the languages, give police the powers, get police officers out there doing stop and search.
Victor Olissa is a former Metropolitan Police commander. Before he retired 2 years ago, he was in charge of the Force's Stop and Search unit.
What worries you about stop and search?
We run a real risk of drifting back to days where supervisors were asking officers to do stop and search as a means of productivity, as a means of activity on the street. So prove to me that you've been doing something on the street. Oh, Sarge, I did 5 stop and search, during my 8-hour tour of duty. If you're doing it that way, then more often than not, you probably don't have the grounds, you probably don't have the skills to be able to do it properly, you create tension in terms of the way you're doing stop and search, you alienate young people.
As someone who has been stopped and searched on several occasions, just like these two teenagers who were filmed being detained by the police, I know it can be a frightening experience. But is stop and search the solution to tackling the violence on our streets?
The police have got to have the stop and search powers. Of course, you've got to do this in a culturally sensitive way, but remember, the communities that are most affected by these crimes are the communities that will be sensitive to these questions. And what you've got to be careful of is talking to people who are kind of political activists who will tell you these powers aren't necessary.
During his time in office, the former Prime Minister Tony Blair reduced overall violent crime levels across the country.
Well, at the moment, it looks like the police are losing the battle. But, you know, these are battles that can be won, but they start from a very simple principle, which is that if you're going to defeat something like this, right from the very top of government, you've got to have an absolute focus, total determination, and do whatever it takes to get the problem solved.
In 2007, a lot of people supported comments that you made. So you said, to quote, "The violence can't be stopped by pretending it is not young black kids doing it." Do you still stand by that?
You can't ignore the reality. Start with the reality. But the reality doesn't lead you to discriminate. The reality just allows you to deal with the reality.
And that reality is the victims and perpetrators of knife and violent crime are predominantly young black men.
Yeah, and if that's the case, you're not going to deal with it better by pretending it's something other than it is. That's not, telling it like it is not discriminatory. Actually, failing to deal with it because it's located, for example, in the black community, that's discriminatory.
The Metropolitan Police say knife crime disproportionately affects black boys and men. Last year, 62% of homicide victims were of African Caribbean heritage, all under the age of 25.
Yes, it is young people that are stabbing each other. They are correct about that. You understand? But yeah, like predominantly when you're saying it's just black, that's not true.
Some police forces across the country are now using Section 60 powers in areas where violence has happened. It allows officers to search anyone without even suspecting them of committing a crime. After 3 fatal stabbings within days of each other just last month, police in Birmingham carried out 408 searches in the city and made 24 arrests. In Preston, the Chief Constable authorised the power in response to a stabbing. During a 24-hour period, 43 people were searched but no arrests were made. And in the capital, there were more than 7,000 searches under Section 60 last year.
Section 60 can become the panacea for a problem that it really isn't going to solve. Without, in my view, at this stage of using it, really due thought to the consequences of actually the damage it can do to police public relations.
The problems with stop and search have been well documented. An inquiry into the 1981 Brixton riots blamed the disproportionate use of the policing power on young black men.
Look, we've had it before in history. You know, we go back to the early 80s and Lambeth, mass use of stop and search, complete displeasure of communities. And it's
when we say displeasure, we're talking about people taking to the streets.
We're talking about people taking to the streets, we're talking about people, public disturbance, talking about people rioting.
The Metropolitan Police say stop and search is an essential policing tool. They continue to work with the Home Office to tackle violent crime.
Do you understand that the police want to keep people safe?
Yes, obviously they've got jobs to do, like keep the public safe. You understand? But using it excessively, that's about abusing the power now.